I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on our panelists here before we get started. So Kirby Plessis, who is the CEO of the Plessis Experts Network. And Kirby has had an amazing career where she has worked with a number of federal agencies. She is a dark web expert, which is good for all of us in this room, because we are going to be doing a live demonstration today of the dark web, navigating there using the Tor browser, and I am so glad Kirby's going to guide us through that process, because I don't want to go anywhere that gets me in trouble and gets a virus. So Kirby's going to take care of us. All right, next up is Jared Peoples, and he is a special counsel to the U.S. Attorney, also civil rights coordinator here in the Southern District of Florida. It's the global fraud capital of the world, and this guy is working side by side with the U.S. Attorney here to fight fraud. He's got 17 years of legal experience and also previously led the Stolen Identity Fraud Task Force, overseeing 75 federal agents and 10 prosecutors. So pretty much anything you can think of in terms of stolen identity and fraud, probably Jared's come across that in his career. We have two detectives with us today from Miami-Dade Police Department. Why are they here? See previous comment about global fraud capital of the world. But these two guys have some very specialized experience. They work with Miami-Dade's Organized Fraud Intelligence Squad. So once again, any type of fraud that you can imagine that folks will do, these guys have probably seen it. So we've got Detective Sebastian Monros and Detective Marcos Rodriguez. And then last we have Mark Leon, who's Pondera's Director of Intelligence. So he oversees our Special Investigations Unit. And Mark's here to talk about some of our actual experiences working with our clients and seeing these instances of stolen identity being used to commit fraud within government programs. So, with that, let's see if we can get started. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. All right, well, if you didn't get the memo, identity theft is on the rise. So we read a lot about it, particularly in the tax fraud space. There's definitely a lot of press, a lot of media about this going on. But there's some interesting trends. Folks like the Federal Trade Commission who study this data and look at complaints. From 2001, for those of you with the back, maybe don't have your eyes fixed yet, it shows about 300,000 complaints to the FTC in 2001. By the time we roll up to 2016, it's over 3 million. Huge. And this is just what the FTC can consume and what they know about. We all know it's larger than that. So we're trending up. We took a look also at some of the data that the FTC puts out about, well, where is this happening? Where is this identity theft happening? That blue, that's tax fraud. That doesn't surprise folks. This is a multi-billion-dollar business every year. But what's interesting, if you look at 2015 compared to 2016, is we see a pretty significant drop in tax fraud. What's going on? Enforcement initiatives, right? The IRS has got some new protocols in place to prevent the fraud from happening in the first place. We've got units of specialized detectives, federal agents, folks across the country who are working on this fraud. So of course, the bad guys are just packing up and going home, right? Can't do tax fraud anymore, and they're making it hard. Absolutely not. We know that's not what's happening. It's like whack-a-mole, folks. We close down one hole and they're going to come right out of another one. So we have started to see this trend with tax and labor fraud, so unemployment insurance. For my friends in Florida, you've probably seen some articles in the news over the last couple of years with some big rings here in Florida that have been busted. So what's happening as that blue bar goes down is all the other categories are going up. Okay, they're looking for vulnerable spaces to use this stolen identity. And if the IRS is going to make it more difficult to do it in the tax space, they're just going to find who their next victim is. So, where are they going to go? So the purpose of our session today is to get folks here thinking about what will happen with Medicaid. Are we vulnerable to the use of this stolen data to commit fraud against our programs? Hopefully by the end, we'll do a lot of head nodding. Yeah, we are. And we have some ideas we can bring back to our state to potentially detect and prevent this from happening. If you haven't seen this, it's a great thing to pick up on YouTube. CNN, Anderson Cooper, Center for Investigative Reporting, did a little story about what they called a fraud tsunami. And our CEO at Pondera loves this term because that's really what it's coming. It's that fast, you don't have a ton of time to prepare, and it completely overwhelms you. And that's what's happening here. What's really interesting for this group is I can remember starting out in Medicaid fraud in healthcare investigations and my lieutenant taking me aside and teaching me about upcoding and unbundling and billing for services not rendered and all those tried and tested ways that you can defraud Medicaid. Folks, this is not that enemy. This is not who we're dealing with. We're talking about street gangs, organized criminal groups, folks that are moving from violent crimes, drug trafficking, into government programs. It's a different enemy. So first things first, we're going to learn about how they do what they do, and Kirby's going to show us that on the dark web.
Good afternoon. All right, so again, my name is Kirby Plessis. I have been working with pretty much any federal agency in the DC area in the OSINT, open source intelligence field. Dark web stuff, mostly I end up talking about the dark web when we talk about drugs. So most of the drug markets that have gone on the dark web, I've been helping some of my clients take some of them down. In the news recently, we had a major bust of some of the biggest dark web websites out there. And this was something that was in the news just recently, the story about the former Bupa employee, and somehow it's to the side here, selling health insurance records on the dark web. So we're going to take a quick cruise through the dark web. This is the Tor browser. You would download that from torproject.org. This is the way to get into the dark web. This is the only way to get into the Tor dark web. Tor is not the only dark web out there, though. So I'm going to go back to Chrome for a minute and talk about a couple of other dark webs that are out there. So a couple other dark webs that are out there. So torproject.org is our #1 place to get into the dark web. The Tor dark web is by far the biggest dark web. It's also the dark web that's getting the most busts recently. So they're probably going to move on to other versions of the dark web. But I would still say this is the one you're going to check first, and this is the one we're going to go and take a little cruise through. All right. The other ones, geti2p.net. Geti2p.net, and I forgot to put something in there. Let's see. I put get1p.net. There we go. There we go. This is the second biggest of the dark webs that are out there. A lot of people, some of the really first hit industries, human trafficking and child victims, have already moved over to this I2P dark web. It's kind of like the whack-a-mole theory. You hit them somewhere, they're going to escape and go somewhere else. So this is the next one. This would be the very next one I would look at for any of the markets as well. And then there's a new one that's being worked on right now, ZeroNet. And I wouldn't say that ZeroNet, the people are in ZeroNet just yet, potentially. All right, so ZeroNet would be the next place to look. How are they paying for things? They're paying for things with Bitcoin. Has anybody here already used Bitcoin a little bit? You haven't played with it? Bitcoin's not illegal. I would suggest you use it to see how it works. Just buy some from Coindesk.com, all right? Coindesk.com. You also have some Bitcoin ATMs, just so you can see how this kind of works. Bitcoin, they have the public wallets that you can track through the wallets. The wallets, every single wallet and every single transaction is public, and then you can track the activity through each individual wallet. You can also get them via Bitcoin ATMs, and there will be some Bitcoin ATMs here in the Miami area. So Bitcoin ATM map, you can actually, and I think I just blocked it from finding us, so we'll do a little search right here. You can see that there are a number of Bitcoin ATMs on this map. You can just walk up to a Bitcoin ATM, pay in dollars, and get Bitcoin out. All right. So once you get Bitcoin out, though, and even if you buy it from CoinDesk, it's very trackable at that point. How you make it not trackable is you go through what's called a Bitcoin tumbler. And a Bitcoin tumbler is something that literally launders. Notice this one's called BitLaunder, right? You put you put some Bitcoins in there, you have it come out to different wallets in different amounts in different time periods, and you've effectively laundered your Bitcoin. So now they're not using the same Bitcoins, you're using a whole different set. So, and I'm not sure why this page isn't loading for us, but again, BitLaunder, it's there's also something called the local Bitcoin, where you can trade Bitcoins with people who are nearby you, and therefore also kind of hide your Bitcoin activity. All right, so we've got Bitcoin, so let's go talk about the dark web. So again, welcome to Tor, right? How do I switch to the dark web? Once I got this Tor browser up, the idea behind it is it's an anonymization browser. I'm not in the dark web right now. I need to get there, and I can't just click a button. There's no button that takes me into the dark web. You need to find a dark web address, all right? Now, these guys who are creating their dark web marketplace and they want to sell stuff in the dark web, they need to find somebody to sell it to, right? They need to market it. So they market it in a couple different places. Probably the best one to look for you would be a Pastebin. So Pastebin, and there's other sites like it. Pastebin isn't the only one, but Pastebin's the biggest and oldest one. And you find websites like this where it allows coders to post their code anonymously. All right, the idea behind it is you post your code so people can see your program and help you fix your program. But malware users use it a lot. They post their program so people can copy their malware and release it somewhere else. All right, it's because it's so anonymous, hackers and malware creators are on here all the time, and these are your same people that are creating the marketplaces out on the dark web that allow your fraudsters to come and list their projects for sale. So they will advertise it here on Pastebin. There is a search bar, and I know it's hard to see at the very top. There's a search bar on this, but the Paste search bars are not really very good. And I will look instead for hidden wiki or other link lists on the dark web. So the dark web, every single website on the dark web ends in .onion. So my search will include that. And then I will include, in quotes, hidden wiki. Hidden wiki is a type of link list. It's not the only one we're looking for, but it's a type. And so if I have .onion and hidden wiki in my search, when I'm searching only site:/Pastebin, so I'm only looking for Pastebin, all of these are dark web link lists of all the different dark web marketplaces that people are putting their stuff out on. All right, this is one of the very common places where they advertise their dark web sites. I'm going to go to tools and leave myself from any time to at least the past year. I usually even bring myself even closer than that because sites go up and sites go down. If you have stuff from 2011, which is when the dark web really started kind of gaining speed, a lot of those sites aren't up anymore. So you need to get the freshest ones. In fact, I'm going to bring myself even closer. I'm going to do a custom range, and I'm going to go back from today, and we'll go back a couple of months. And now we've limited ourselves just to a couple of these lists. I will grab, let's see, I'm going to grab this top one. And in here, these are the dark web addresses. So now to get to my dark web sites, all I need to do is copy some of these addresses. You'll see that they have a couple of sections. The wikis, all of these ones at the top are the different, wikis are just the link lists as well. And then you've got these other link lists that are down here, and then some search engines. And some of the search engines might actually be what you may look for more, something like Torch. All right, so we'll bring out Torch. And I'm just going to, before I go to Torch, let me open a new tab in Chrome here and paste that in and go to it. You never have to worry about going to a dark website in a regular browser. It can't get there. All right, so you have to be in Tor. This is the kind of example you'll get. You can't get to it. So we'll go back to Tor. We'll pop that search engine URL back in here. And while it's loading, Tor is going to be slower than any other browser because it has to go through 3 locations and 3 back before it can go bring us back results from the internet. So it's going to be a little bit slower. While that's loading, I'm going to go back to my Chrome search again, and I'm going to grab another search engine, Grams, which is kind of like Kayak for the dark web. Kayak, where it searches several different search markets at once, right? Grams does the same, several different dark webs at once, dark web markets. And we'll let that load, and we'll go back and we'll grab one more thing. We'll grab the uncensored hidden wiki. This is probably the most developed of the wikis that are out there, the hidden wikis, but there's a number of hidden wikis, as you can see, even active at any point. Hidden wiki is just, it's the same software as Wikipedia, for example, but instead it's inside the dark web, and it's not Wikipedia topics, we'll say, all right? It's going to be, whatever's for sale in the dark web, and anybody can come in and edit it and add their marketplace. So that's kind of what the hidden wiki is. All right, so we hit the Tor project, I2P, and Freenet. Freenet and Darknet are 2 other dark webs. They're generally not so much in use right now, as far as I can tell. Coinbase, here's some Bitcoin ATM stuff. BitLaunder, that's the one that should have, but you can see right there it's advertising that it anonymizes it. This is the Grams market. So for example, in this case, I searched for SSN, meaning Social Security, and then Full Z basically is how they're advertising that they have full information that go along with those Social Security cards. And so here's a bunch of markets that are selling it. You can see the listing, and next to it says Dream. We've got the vendor, whose name in this case is Evola, and it's 0 next to it, meaning they have 0 rankings up and down. Everything in the dark web goes by reputation. The more upvotes you have, the more people are going to buy from you. The more downvotes, people are going to avoid you because you might be a scammer, right? And you can see the Bitcoin price for them. And right now, the Bitcoins, I think, are about $2,700 per Bitcoin. Wait, I'm going backwards, sorry. There we go. All right, so this is the Uncensored Hidden Wiki. This is their main page. Right here, you can see some of the stuff that they have at the top. Their featured article, for example, pedophilia. I'm going to scroll down on that. They got a whole section for commercial services, including drug markets. Now, in the case of the drug markets, this specific wiki marks everything a scam except for the Green Dragon UK. You can tell who pretty much owns this wiki. And you can actually see the drama of these wikis as well if you go to their discussion page and the history page and see them kind of fighting. Other people from other markets will come here and fight about it. But here's hacking, phreaking services, that sort of thing. These are the people who will actually hack information and then resell it for you, so you can actually pay somebody, for example, to try and hack any pharmacy or any other kind of group that has that information and send it back out. All right, so here's just another link list. This one's called Visitor. It's a very popular one. These ones are more like traditional directories, and another one, the Onion link list. So those are basically what I have for you on here, and I do want to show one more website, and then I'll kind of give it back. Let's see how if our tour stuff came up. Sometimes you just have to refresh it, so whatever reason it didn't do this now, if anybody wants to stay after, we can go and look for some specific stuff in there. But one last website I do want to show you. If you're wondering whether or not your stuff has been leaked, an example place to go to is something like Have I Been Pwned? And if you haven't seen that, this is just a guy who runs a website, and he checks for the breaches. And you can put any email address in there. You can even put just the ending of an email address. So for example, if you're your company, you can put an asterisk at your company name and see if there's any of your company stuff that has been involved in a breach. And as an example, I'll just put my name in here, or my Gmail account. And in this case, my Gmail account has been exposed in 7 different breaches and 1 paste. Now, it tells you which breaches, but it won't link directly to them. But at that point, you can go and search that down to see exactly what was released.
So next we're going to hear from Jared Peoples, and he's going to talk about a couple of very notable cases that he's worked on involving stolen identities.
Well, first I want to say good afternoon to everyone. And the second thing I want to say is that I'm here as an invited guest based upon my experience, and nothing I say is as representative of the Department of Justice or the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. So.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
So can I close this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm okay without the slides. Okay. So I was invited here based upon my experience in dealing with stolen identity fraud, and in particularly now with the development of the darknet, the use of stolen identity fraud and the darknet, the dark web. And so the question, and I think the issue is for each of you is twofold. There are internal and external threats. And the way I view it, an internal threat is an employee, as in someone inside your organization, your agency, that can compromise, that has access to the data. And what we mean by the data is that's the social security numbers, the names, the dates of birth of individuals, your patients, your clients. And the internal threat is the person inside who has access to this information. And the external threat, more so what Kirby's talking about, is sort of like this malware. You sort of have hackers having access to your systems where this PII, this personal identifiable information, is stored. And you have to understand, and whenever we talk about this as prosecutors, that the data, the names, the social security numbers, the dates of birth of individuals, your clients, this is trade secrets. It has a value, and it has a value not only on the streets but also on the dark web. And so you must understand that as an organization, as agencies, you must protect this data. There are 2 cases in which I'm going to briefly talk about, and these cases involve internal threats. One case involved the United States versus an Achilles. This is a case that I personally prosecuted. This is which an employee worked at a community health center. And over the course of years, this employee stole thousands of name, dates of birth, social security numbers. And what she did, and this is all in publicly filed records and documents, she would sell that information to fraudsters who committed tax fraud with that information. And not only that they committed tax fraud, but they were also engaged in credit card fraud and other fraud involving the personal identifiable information of clients. And in that case, it was over 9,000 names, dates of birth, and social security numbers that were stolen from a healthcare center here in Dade County. The second case is United States versus Reed. This is still an open case, but the defendant has pled guilty. And in that case, the defendant, she had access again to the database that contained the social security numbers, the dates of birth, the names of the patient. And over the course of years, she stole over 24,000 name, dates of birth, social security number. And again, this is information that was used to file fraudulent tax returns or even some of the other types of fraud in terms of social security fraud, which is also a fraud in which they're moving towards, in which they would set up a social security account using, again, the PII of individuals and open up and then receive the money, or go into someone's social security account and then sort of redirect the funds to accounts in which they control. Now, from the federal side, and as the work we've done here in South Florida and throughout the country, is that they've been aggressive regarding the tax fraud and set up different control mechanisms. And as Amanda mentioned earlier, we actually have a stolen identity fraud here. Initially, it was set up as a stolen identity refund fraud to deal with government refund fraud involving stolen identity. And at the top of that time was tax fraud. And then later it became unemployment compensation fraud, and now Social Security fraud. But now we've expanded the strike force, in which Detective Monrose and Rodriguez are a part of, is that it deals with sort of just stolen identity fraud in terms of credit card, the full range of everything that you could do once you have someone's PII. And I want to go back to, in terms of my work and my experience, again, it goes back to these two threats, the internal and the external. And it's important that you have mechanisms in place to protect your access and who has access to the PII. Because, again, that information from these two cases is that these are just a gold mine for thieves. Is that, and we've had state agencies here in the state of Florida in which there have been internal breaches where people have gone in and gotten the information for people and used that, sold it. I mean, and Detective Monrose and Rodriguez will explain a little bit more that the information is sold on the streets, but it's also sold to brokers who then sell it on the dark web. And once your information is on the dark web, it would then be recycled and redistributed. And in terms of the value of someone's PII, that's how much it's worth. Now, there is, and you could probably elaborate in terms of the gold standard. If you have a name, social security number, a date of birth, and an address, that's like a gold standard. It has a higher value as opposed to just maybe a social security number. And the more information that you have tying a person to a social security number is the more valuable that information is. And also in terms of you being the sort of depository of this information, is that the first time it's used, it has a higher value. So fraudsters are always looking for places of compromise. In terms of my experience in prosecuting cases, people have gone out and recruited. They look for nurses. They look for people who work in agencies and organizations that have access to this information because they want to be the first to get this information. So I just want to emphasize how important this information is and how it should be treated as if it is a trade secret and it is valuable. And the last thing I want to really emphasize is what happens when you have a breach, when you realize that an employee has been going into work every day, taking the thumb drive and downloading, PII, or writing it in the early days of the fraud, they would just write it down on sheets of paper. When you realize that, you need to contact law enforcement. You need to contact your local law enforcement who would know what to do and have the relationship with the federal agencies. You contact the FBI. You contact your FBI office, your local district office, as well as the Secret Service. These are the two federal agencies that investigate these types of crimes involving the sort of theft of and computer crimes involving the theft of a PII. So it's important that you contact law enforcement because these are criminal crimes. It's just not just sort of internal sort of a bad employee matter. This is a crime to actually possess unlawfully someone's social security number. It is a crime. And you also, in the context of the agencies and the type of work you do, you're dealing with Medicare and healthcare crimes. These are federal crimes. So these are not just purely just internal matters. Law enforcement should be contacted.
Just to give you a little background, since it's out of context, Miami is by far the fraud capital of the nation. When tax fraud was at its peak, we had a 46 percent, not percent, but a 46 multiplier higher than the rest of the country. So everywhere else was 46 times less than here. Medicare fraud, you guys, that's what you guys do, right? A lot of you guys deal with that. I know from 2007 to 2015, the US government charged about 2,500 people with about $7 billion worth of fraud. Out of those 2,300 people, 1,500 were from Miami. So we tend to own that here. We're very proud of that. Now, the thing about Miami, people always ask me, why Miami, why Miami? This is a very party city. People come from everywhere to party, to reinvent themselves. You know, the LeBron James syndrome, as they call it. I'm going to take my talents to South Beach. So we get guys that come down here for that. They see the women, the cars. Everyone here drives Porsches and Mercedes-Benz. You'll see a Maserati parked outside an efficiency. That's common in what I investigate. It makes no sense, but it is what it is. So since they come here to reinvent themselves, that's when you find that the fraud is very easy for them because it's like, you know what, no one's gonna question where my money comes from. No one cares, as long as we go to the club and do drugs and whatever. So to illustrate that, we have, I'm gonna show you now again, I do more street level stuff. I don't deal so much with Medicare stuff, but I deal with what I see, what happens once this stuff is in the streets, passed around, the PII meaning. So this began as a point of compromise investigation in News Cafe in Miami Beach. That's right down the street. We got a waiter. Typical case for us, 4 people, like any one of you went to go eat, then all of you had fraud, and you all paid with a separate card. It doesn't take a genius to put together this case. Someone stole your credit card number. We go to the waiter. We confront him. He had the skimmer in his pocket, so that worked out great. And that's the receipt at the bottom. You can see the 4 credit cards. Now, one thing about, this is an easy way to get PII. This is the most basic way to do it. Just hire someone, steal credit card numbers. That's it. Waiters are not very loyal. They're usually high school kids. They don't, college kind of kids. When you confront them with jail time, they have no attachment to these people. So they flip really quickly, which is one of the reasons why this isn't as common anymore. All right. So he tells us, hey, I work for some guy named Mac. He pays me to give him cards, and that's all I know about him. We're like, all right, let's set up a deal. So we set up a controlled delivery. Now, it just turns out, it'll fit in later, but that's Mac over there. So he happens to show up to the deal wearing all red hat, red shirt, red pants, which was fitting because he's the target. And then he was wearing a Red Life shirt, which later we found out is like his own company that he made up. So he couldn't have advertised himself more. I just didn't know who he was. In hindsight, now I find it amusing. All right, so our CI is over there. He does the exchange. Now we were set up in a way where we didn't know which way he was gonna go. We knew nothing about him. So we didn't know if he had a car, if he walked. So we were set up so we had cars nearby and then walking surveillance nearby to follow him. So we do the exchange. We give him now. There's a little machine that you use to slide the card that steals the numbers. I'm not going to get into it because time, but we give him that machine. We follow him to a Highrise. Now, this is not an artist rendering. That's where he lives. Like right around there is where he was. So he had a view of the water. He was, we followed him home. We pulled him over outside. He was getting into a BMW. That's when we took him down because we didn't know where he lived. So we thought he was going to get in the car. And by now, we walked like 4 blocks. So we got in the car, he was gone. Inside, he had more of the machines. You can't tell there, but that's it's called a skimmer. It costs like $200 on the internet. You can buy one on eBay. It's really, really cheap. It holds 2,000 credit card numbers. All right, we do a search warrant at his house after some things that happened there. And in the house, we end up finding notebooks, which are here, where they have the name, date of birth, and social security number of like 2,000 different people. This is just laying out in his house, like in his drawers, on top of his bed. He wasn't, he was single, so he didn't really have anyone to clean up. And then we also find, not that women need to clean up all the time, but they tend to be the cleaner. They tend to be the cleaner of the den. So
Moving along.
here you have a receipt where we actually found he was actually paying our waiter, has our waiter's name on it, so it's beautiful. He kept good records. I'll give this to Max. He kept good records. See, that's our waiter's name over there. So, okay, we find the waiter evidence, tax fraud. This is an actual file of the hit from his computer. So when you download the skimmer, this is how it prints out a text file with the credit card numbers. He would keep notes. So, for example, he would have the date of the download, and then he would put like Lennon didn't want to work or something because there wasn't enough numbers. So it was awesome. I mean, he really did a good thing for us there. He had about 1,200 credit card numbers, and even though I touch upon later, again, I don't know if I'm going to get to it, it ended up being about $250,000 that he made off those 1,200 numbers. So $250,000 for 1,200 numbers. These are the text files, as I was telling you, with the names. One of them says here, I think Lennon didn't want to work. So quickly, that's Chris Mack. So what he did is he just went around restaurants on the beach and hired waiters and said, hey, listen, I'll give you the little skimmer. You swipe the card. I'll pay you $20 per number, and that's it. To the waiter, hey, yeah, okay, $20 per number. I can do a couple hundred numbers every cycle. It's easy. Now, one little thing people always ask me, they're like, oh, I went to go eat at this place, and then I had fraud the next day. Unless you were the last number of the cycle, it's not going to be like that. It's usually not so instantaneous. So if you went to go eat yesterday, you probably won't have fraud today. It takes a few days, usually like about a week, between them making the cards and doing stuff, downloading the information. So just so you know, because people usually ask that. So he would make fake credit cards. What he would do is he would launder the money. He would make a fake counterfeit credit card. Let me see. All right, so I don't know how this goes because it's off the top of my head. All right, so these are all fake credit cards. They're completely fabricated and printed. This is not a real card. This was a white plastic that he printed the logo, the Visa, the MasterCard. You can buy them online too. Embossed his name, put the Capital One thing, the Bank Atlantic, all that stuff. So he makes a fake credit card, puts his name on it, puts your number, then he goes and buys a money order. Oh, I'm sorry, jumped ahead. A gift card. I forgot, he went one step further. He buys gift cards with the credit card. So now that money's already kind of been cleaned because you can't really trace the gift card. It takes forever to subpoena these companies. They don't make it easy for us, privacy. All right, and then he would buy money orders. So this guy paid everything with money orders, rent, food, everything he could with money orders. But once he's paying with money orders, it's effectively cleaned because for us to chase down all that is just going to take forever, unless we do it how we did it, that we found everything in his house. All right, so the motivation, as I was saying in my prelude here, is the lifestyle here. This is a city that lends itself to this because it's just a flashy city. The first boom was 80s drug money. I mean, it is what it is. I love Miami, but it is what it is. That's my opinion, not the Miami-Dade Police Department. So anyways, just want to say that. So the motivation here is always the same. Women, cars, and then just partying, So that's him. He went to, there's a club here called Club Nikki Beach. There's beds in case you guys want to go. Sure, you guys already went. There's beds there, and you can hang out and drink. So now I have a video that, if time permits, I'll show it to you. I think you have to ask Amanda just to let me show it to you because she didn't want to. Where they have, where you'll see how he meets the girls in the beach. You can also go online. He posted all this stuff up. Just at the end, I'll tell you what to Google, and you'll see when he meets the girls and they talk to him. He made a whole video, but whatever. That's from his pool party that he had, and then that's him sitting courtside The closest I've ever gotten is like here. But good for him. This is from his Instagram account. He went on vacation. He thought, no, he did. He thought he was like this. He thought he was like Jay-Z. He thought he was a mogul, self-made, and he put this out there. And to him, it was more important that people thought he was this mogul, self-made guy than anything else. To the point that when he got arrested, he wouldn't even pay his bond because he didn't want like a free public defender, because he claimed that he made like 20 grand a month, until eventually he sat there for months and he realized, okay, he couldn't afford a lawyer because he didn't have access to the money, but yet he wouldn't want to admit on an affidavit that he made less, so it just hurt him because the judge wouldn't give him a person, whatever. So let me see. Again, more of the same. That's it. We found the sketches of him doing the Red Life shirts. Red Life is his lifestyle company that he would throw, and then he was a lifestyle coach, and then he would try to, in hip hop parlance, there's like a popular phrase called turn up. So it's like get turned up, kind of like get like wild, party, whatever. So he wanted to replace the word turn up with get red live. I mean, he wasn't gonna. Listen, I'm telling you, when I say delusion, I mean delusion. This is him with the pictures he would post. That's ESPN anchor. That's Chris Bosh. He has a lot of pictures with famous people because, and again, it's a Miami thing. You don't know who's next to you. But if you're in the club and you're buying bottles, all right, yeah, let's take a picture, because that's all that matters. It's a very fake town. That's another ESPN guy. That's a rapper that's not around anymore. That's Ty Lawson from the Denver Nuggets, for any sports fans here. That's Mayweather in the back over there. Okay, this I don't understand. So he made a ton of money, right? And then he would just spend it buying goofy outfits. Like, someone told me that this is like some Japanese like thing that's worth like, I don't know. It looks like a Halloween costume. It looks like a Pokemon. It looks like you're wearing a Pokemon shirt or something, like it's about to hatch. I mean, again, it speaks for itself. I don't think I need to describe. This, I don't get. How did he find the only wall that matches that shirt? Because I can understand buying the shirt, but then how do you get the walls? Like, you have to get one of them made for each other. They can't exist independent of one another. Oh, see, there's like other goofy race car, whatever. Anyways, in the end, we found that he stole about 1,500 numbers in 1 month. In 1 year. He made $250,000 from just the skimming with the restaurants. That's it. Then the ledgers had over 2,000 names, date of births, and all that stuff. And then that linked him to 250 fraudulent tax returns for about $1.2 million. And in the end, I did like 4 search warrants, 6 arrest warrants. We got some money. But that's kind of in a nutshell. That multiplied times 100 every day, and that's Miami. So that's what, and once it gets out there, and it's with guys like this, other guys see them at the clubs and stuff like that, like, hey man, I want to make that cash too. So now what happens is that they start to look for ways to get the PII, to get the social security numbers and all that stuff. So one thing that we saw that was big down here in the North End, we have a lot of Haitian gangs. Those Haitian gangs started to get into the PII because what they would do is they would go to the clubs. They would have like TurboTax Tuesday at the strip club, or I had another one that I forgot for Monday. And, they would make it rain or whatever, and these guys would walk in with tons of cash. They use that money to buy guns, so they do the drive-bys. So once it's out there, once it's on the street level, it's pervasive. Like in the high schools right now, in the North End, there is PII being passed around in like cell phones with 16-year-old kids, because it's hit the gangs up there and everything else. He wasn't a gang member; he was just a joker. But that's what it is. That's how Miami is. So once for us, like seeing the PII, it's so easy to monetize it that it's just out there. It's not just the corporations and the hospitals, and then it's not just the fraud that's going to the government. It just, these guys will start looking for any way to monetize this, and they just need to get as much as they can get. So they're constantly hiring people or whatnot.
All right, so let's bring it back home to Medicaid, right? So this is not your doctor or your dentist padding their claims, breaking things apart, giving kickbacks to the lab company. This is not what we're used to dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Those guys are still there, right? They're probably always going to be there. There's a government, rainbow with a pot of gold at the end. They'll still be there, right, looking for opportunities. But what we're seeing and what we've seen especially over the last 5 years in the trends and the utilization of the data that's being stolen in these breaches, or simple things like skimmers or whatever the case might be, we are seeing an increase of that in government programs, and I don't believe Medicaid should find itself immune. Right? So we're going to see this in the front end through our beneficiaries in the eligibility process, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity for our providers as well to develop these networks to get folks enrolled. You know, there's recruiters out there paying people to enroll in Medicaid, so we definitely feel like the trend is moving this way. Let's see, spacebar, right? There we go. All right, so should we just give up and cry uncle and say, hey, you know, these guys, there's just no way to stop it. We've got to keep providers in our network. We want to get beneficiaries treatment. And we think there's an awful lot that can be done to proactively identify these schemes, and we think the key is through the data. We have an opportunity at this point to start to develop models or patterns that are associated with these schemes. We are starting to see that across the country with our clients that we work with at Pondera. Everything from Medicaid to unemployment insurance to food and cash assistance, we are starting to see these networks infiltrate these programs, and sometimes from very far away. So Mark is going to talk about two specific examples that we have where we've been able to develop some patterns to detect these types of criminal networks and improper use of data in programs.
Thank you. And like Amanda said, it's using different pieces of data to help you guys stop the fraud before they turn into the individuals that Detective Rodriguez and Monrose go after. So in one case, one of our UI clients, unemployment insurance clients, we deployed some dashboard alerts for them, and we were able to come up with identity theft and shell company instances for them that saved them literally probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in this case, what we were able to show is that unemployment insurance claims are being filed. And one of the flags that we deployed tripped on the IP addresses that these individuals were using to file the claims. So upon further investigation by our client, you had a number of claimants using the same IP address. As it turned out, they were also using the same email address as well as similar phone numbers. As they continued to look into the businesses for which these people allegedly worked, we found out that they were nothing more than shell companies. There was no corporate filings for the businesses. There was no D&B data for the businesses. They had no online presence, no social media presence. So through looking at these various different data sets and tying them together, the client was able to, instead of losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, they were able to cap their loss at around $10,000. So it was through the process of tying all of this together, from instead of having the information siloed among various agencies or databases, we were able to help them stop the fraud before it went much further and turned into a show that the detectives could then look into. Spacebar, Amanda?
Yep.
Another data set that you can look at is incarcerations. Because obviously, if somebody's incarcerated, they shouldn't be a Medicaid recipient. They should not be unemployment compensation recipient. In this instance, it's just another example of a data set that could be used to identify these people. In this case, this lady, she was in jail for approximately 2 years. She was booked in August of 2014, released in July of 2016. Interestingly enough, she applied for state benefits beginning, practically a year into her sentence. And during that period of time, during that almost 1 year period of time that she received the benefits, the paid claims that she obtained were $50,000. Had the agency been able to look a little bit deeper into the claimant, they would have determined that she was not eligible for these benefits and therefore saved approximately $50K. But she was in jail due to going to play pool while she left her baby in the car, being sat by her dog for protection.
So, questions. We made it. Maybe video. I don't know. We'll see we'll do what the people want. One thing I did want to mention too is just the prevalence of PII and how easy it is to get. So it's a natural opportunity. I think when I first talked with Detective Monrose, he said it's like getting water. So it's not hard to get. You saw Kirby demonstrate how easy it was to get on the dark web and buy fulls. $50, you can get a full identity. If anyone's been a victim of identity theft in this room, you know how miserable that is, right? Once your information's out there. So certainly the opportunity is available. If you were in our session last year and we talked about the fraud triangle and what motivates behavior, we got opportunity out the wazoo here. So the data's available and we have a system that runs on this. In the last case Mark showed you, that individual's information, was obviously being used while she was incarcerated. So, all right, so let's open it up to questions. And if not, I have some for the panel. Go ahead.
So what happened to Mac?
He ended up getting 8.5 years, which is a lot for fraud, because normally nonviolent crime doesn't give you a lot. It's these guys get 2 years, 4 maybe. So for him, it was rough. He had started a GoFundMe page to try to get him out at one point. No, you can't make it up. And one of the videos I have, if you guys want to see it later, it's him giving credit advice or whatever.
Jeez. If only he'd use those entrepreneurial tendencies for the, forces of good, right? He probably could have done something. Other questions?
What I tell people all the time, your stuff's gonna come out. It is there's no way to prevent it. Even if you guys, keep controls at the hospitals or this and that, you go buy a car and you give your social security number to the finance guy. There's no locks there. A ton of people touch those files. When we've had, from experience, I'm telling you about the car dealerships. You go to a car dealership, hey, who are the people that touch this file? We don't know. It's in a file cabinet, and you know what I mean? So they're gonna get it, whether it be an intern at a doctor's office or at a car dealership, it's gonna come out. All you can do is just be vigilant, make sure that you keep on your credit, no new accounts, stuff like that. But you have to assume that they will eventually. You see these Home Depot breaches, 50,000 numbers. They break into companies, like Gerard was saying. They're just gonna get that stuff. Just last Friday, we did a buy where we bought a fake ID along with a credit profile, so that the guy can go to stores. There's another separate scam that they do, but they'll go to stores like Bloomingdale's, Macy's, whatever, where you can open a credit account and you don't need to wait for the card to come in. They give you a paper and it's oh, use it and show the paper. And they'll just drive around for the weekend and do $100,000, 20 grand per store. And then that's it. They made $100,000. You sell that in the street, and it was, it's clean, with someone's credit. And they'll run them on LexisNexis. These guys have the same search tools that you guys have, So you'll find them. You'll find the credit reports, the ones that are really, developed. They get a little more sophisticated. They know where to go to look for the stuff. So it's out there. You can't really.
And to touch on that, I was speaking to her earlier. There's individuals out there, they have a lot of money. And their way of making money is basically investing in fraud. I've ran into individuals, what they've done is more towards what you all deal with the Medicare and the pharmaceuticals and all that. They'll go to these mom and pop pharmacies, these mom and pop retailers that sell equipment, and they'll buy the business. They're not buying the business because they want to make money off of what they sell at the retail. What they're buying is information. So what they do is they buy these businesses. Sometimes what they do, if they create these shell corporations, other corporations, what they do is they get that information shifted over to that company and they start the billing on that corporation. So you're trying to figure out how did they get this information from? It's basically from one local place. Think about it. If you go to any small pharmacy, you go to any small retailer that sells medical equipment, they have all the information that you need in order to bill Medicare and Medicaid. So sometimes they'll burn the business. They'll basically start billing, especially Medicare and Medicaid or the state of Florida or whatever state you're from. They'll bill it for 6 months because there is a lapse in time between the time that the federal government or state government pays and then actual fraud then is the fraud alert comes out and now they're paying. So sometimes they'll burn the business, then within 6 months to a year, that business is gone. Some of them do it differently. Like I said, some will open up a shell company and they'll just start billing through other corporations. And when you start looking at it, that's when the investigation comes in and let you find out this information was breached from this pharmacy or those pharmacies and so on. So they'll easily, invest. I was telling her a story. I have a friend of mine that owns a pharmacy down in the Homestead area, and the guy came and offered him $500,000 in cash. He called me. He told me what I thought. I told him take it, but that's a whole different. That's a whole different story there. But the right side of me told him, "Hey, listen. What they're trying to do. They're trying to buy the information. They're trying to buy the information from." They're trying to buy the information that you basically have cataloged for the past 40 to 45 years as being an owner of a pharmacy. So, like I said, we do the street level, and it just evolves into everything.
So when you go on the dark web, the whole point is to anonymize yourself using Tor. The Have I Been Pwned is not on the dark web. That's just a regular website. It's run by a security person. So there's a lot of different ones like Have I Been Pwned. Have I Been Pwned is run by a guy named Troy Hunt. He's respectable as far as a secure InfoSec person, but they could be just grabbing your information. Some of the search engines, for example, you come across a search engine, it has a lot of your information, and you think, oh, I got to get that off, and you see the privacy button, and you remove your stuff. You just confirm that that it's true, is basically a lot of times what you do. The dark web itself, though, the software to get in the dark web, the whole idea is to anonymize yourself. There's always people trying to break that, so there's things that you shouldn't do. For example, when you're on site on that, don't log into things necessarily, because who's on the other side watching you log into whatever else. But the stuff that I was going to do right here, this was not something that would ever have exposed me in the dark web. All right, I would have been just like any anonymous pair of eyeballs looking at it, which they could see that there were people looking at it. They don't know who. Yeah, there's. They cannot, and I'll demonstrate that again if anybody wants to stay after. We'll play with the computer a little bit, and I'll show you what we look like to them. Mm-hmm. You're welcome.